Okay, so let's talk about DISCAS. Basically, I'm going to run you through the CTS prep version of DISCAS, what we
Okay.
teach in CTS prep, exactly how we do it.
Okay,
And this
perfect.
clears up a bit.
Yeah, yeah. So just to
So,
give background, if someone's watching this and didn't see the LinkedIn thread that kind of started, I was trying to compare the old 468 rule of figuring out display sizes, recommended display sizes per AVIXA standards, against the newer DISCAS standard. So I was coming out with some weird values, so I threw the question out to the interwebs, and someone dropped Chuck's name, and so
hello.
good golly. Okay, I think my internet just went out in the middle of that.
So,
All right, so let's go ahead and get started.
okay, let me reshare this.
Yep.
Whiteboard, PowerPoint slide, share. Okay, you should be seeing my PowerPoint slide now.
I do indeed. Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so this is a quick down and dirty on the DISCAS. So the things we want to look at when we're looking at DISCAS, the whole purpose of DISCAS is we want to recommend the best display for our clients. We want to help them out. And it's not just looking at the physics of the room and the furthest view and all that, because now content has gotten to be so much more important, and resolution. We get these huge resolutions now. And if you look at something like an Excel spreadsheet, if you put it on a 4K, no matter what display you look at an Excel spreadsheet on a 4K, if it's a 13-inch display, if it's a 90-inch display, the cells are tiny compared to the rest of the display. So now we really have to, we can't say, hey, I have a 90-inch 4K, so that's about 45 inches tall. That means I can see out to 270 inches, or, almost, 20-something feet away.
Yep.
So, but you can't see that cell 20-something feet away. So we have to really take content in. So it's the application to the client, the size of the display, how close to sit. Like, it gets to a point where we're all up in its business, and it's like a tennis match, right?
Right.
How far to sit so we're not squinting and we can see this display comfortably for an extended period of time. And how large the actual stuff, the content should be. So we want to.
And how long ago did DISCAS become a standard?
Let's see. 2016. It actually came out. If you see here, V20201 2016. So we launched it in January 2016. The problem is, standards are voluntary. Yep. So people see it and go through kind of what you went through. They're like, man, this math is a pain. It's really hard. I'm just going to use 468. So that's cool until we come up to the whole content aspect.
Right.
And I'll show you how 468 kind of fits in, but it really is content driven.
Okay.
So let's look at this. The old way of doing things didn't account for different aspect ratios. 468 kind of came out when we were in still the 4:3 mode, right?
Yeah.
Square. Didn't account for different resolutions. Like, that's really 468 tops out at about 720. It was a best practice. It was a very good best practice. And the origins, so myself and a couple of the other instructors and one of our curriculum developers actually traced its origins back to Kim Milligan, worked with Daylight, and there was a whole paper he wrote in 468 came out. And it was a good rule of thumb for a long time.
And about what does that 468 rule date back to?
The 50s.
Okay.
It was literally the 50s.
Wow.
So, yeah, when displays first started being a thing, they hey, we need some kind of guidance on this. So this guy wrote a paper, and, it was in Daylight. Daylight said this is how we kind of do things. And they've really been a really good proponent of let's do things scientifically.
Mm-hmm.
So it was such an issue with the content thing. We finally, AVIXA brought a bunch of specialists together, display specialists, optometrists. They brought optometrists to figure out, oh yeah. Like, how do the eye holes actually work? Yeah. So we want to make sure that not only the display is correct for the room, but people can actually see it. So we started looking at a bunch of different things, and like how the eyes operate as part of the system.
Yeah.
So So we brought these optometrists in to educate the display experts on exactly what we need for our eyes to pick up and comfortably, not just look at it and go, yeah, okay, this is for, like, I want to be able to read content on my screen all day long, like
Yeah,
an 8 hour.
long-term comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. So they came up with this standard. Now the standard is a standard. It's very standard language. It's not difficult to read, but if you're not adept to reading technical standard stuff, it gets a little confusing. Um, it's worded very well, and it gives you all the math. Like, I read it and I was like, man, what does that mean? And then I went back and actually we had talks with some of the guys who developed the standard. And then I went back and read it and go, oh, that clears that all up. Now I know how to use that equation.
Uh,
So once you go through it a few times, you're like, it clears that all up totally. So we don't actually, in CTS level, we don't actually teach like the trigonometry and the math that goes into this, but we teach you how to effectively use this with the calculator online and what that calculator actually does.
okay.
So
Okay.
for CTS level, you don't have to be a design engineer. You don't have to be a mathematician or a rocket surgeon. Like, this is basic down and dirty on how to use this and make it effective for you.
I'm glad someone else uses the term rocket surgery.
It's all
Like
rockets.
me. It's not rocket surgery.
So we're going to address a couple things: image height, image resolution, content, closest and furthest viewer. And another thing that 468 didn't address is if the display is higher,
Yeah.
we have to take that into consideration, or if the display is lower. So
Okay.
horizontal and vertical viewing distance, like how far off axis I can go. Now, we had some good best practices for, so many angle from the center, so many from the side. This actually gives us hard numbers to hit.
Okay. Okay.
So your eye can see the difference between a line and a space out to so far. We have to have so much of an angle for our eye holes to see.
Mm-hmm.
To see comfortably. Now, if you think about this, if I have a line, a space, and a line, and it's a group of pixels, if I'm right up in the display's business, I can see those pixels. I can see the line and space and line. But as I back up and the angle between the top line and the bottom of the line decreases, it starts to look like one line.
Right. That's why an alternating pixel pattern starts to look like gray when you get back far enough, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this concept is what optometrists use to diagnose how our vision is. If you see the screen, it's not actually an E, it's an optotype. There are it's called an optotype.
Huh.
So we have this line, a space, a space with a couple dots in it, another space with a couple dots spread out, and a line. We have A, B, C, and D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're all evenly spaced out. And if we look at the top one, that's a specific size representing a specific angle. As we go down, the angle gets tighter and tighter and tighter until we can't see it anymore. So when we get down below a certain level and we can't tell the difference between, say, an E and a Z, or a D and an O, that's when we can't discern both, not just top to bottom, but side to side, the spaces and the lines. So that's the extent of our visual acuity. That's where we get, at 20 feet with someone with good vision, with, what they say, perfect vision, is able to see at 20 feet. And there is a formula for this to discern, the whole 1 minute, what 1 minute of arc should be. It's a tangential formula for the angle, and we actually have these formulas in there. Again, you don't have to do this to use the standard. You don't have to know the math behind this. You just have to know that this is what our visual acuity is.
Right. Well, this is what creates or this is the source of the visual acuity factor numbers that you see referenced in basic decision making and analytical decision making formulas for the DISCAS formulas for those.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So we have all the math in the back. So if somebody says, hey, how do you figure this out? Well, it's in the back. Let's go in and read all the formulas. If not, we're just going to go to the calculator. Once we know what all the variables mean, we could just type in the calculator and we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so determining furthest viewer and closest viewer. This is going to be one of the big things we look for because we're going into a room and it's usually we don't have a display. We don't know what the content is, but what we could tell is the client says, I need video stuff in this room.
Yep.
So we can take measurements of the room, the ceiling height, the depth of the room, and the width of the room, and give that to our engineering department, and they can apply the formulas, the DISCAS formulas.
Right.
So we're going to look at those. We need to know what an element is. So you see this reference a lot in basic decision making. What is an element? And a lot of the times they say, well, we're going to go off the the letters, the text. It's not just text. An element can be anything. And we don't want to use text for a couple reasons. I'll talk about on the next slide. But if you look here, this is basic decision making. We're concerned with an overall view of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So on this screen, I have a portrait of a guy. And this is from an art history class. And they're trying to determine time periods in this art history class by looking at the painting. So for this time period, his armor and his collar make up a certain specific point in time when they made armor like this and the fashion was like this. So this element here is about, I would say, a third of the screen. So we have pretty much a 30% element height. Now, if I'm looking at this letter E here and the thing that I'm looking at, what I'm concentrating on is not this picture, but this PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to make decisions, basic decisions based on this text. So I would use like this letter E as an example, and the height, the physical height from the bottom of this E to the top of this E is going to be our element height.
Okay. And this tripped me up when I was trying to use the DISCAS formula at first, which is one of the things you help clear up for me, which is the height of the text. Say we're looking at 10-point font to make the math easy, and our display is 1080p, right? So it's 1080 lines high. Our element height is not 10 divided by 1080.
Right,
might seem at first blush. Why is that?
Okay, good question. So there's in the study of typography, the study of letters on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
How big is a letter when we say 10-point font, we're going to print it? Or how big is a letter when we say 10-point font, we're actually going to put it on a web page?
Yeah.
So 10 points, a point is a specific measurement of this of what the line's going to take up. But if you think about it, a 10-point capital W is not the same as a 10-point lowercase e.
Sure, okay.
Totally.
That makes
And
sense.
even a lowercase p is different than a 10-point lowercase e. So this p is going to take up a lot more pixels than this e or this s.
Okay.
So if you say 10-point font, usually a point font, there's a bunch of different things they say that play into it. There's the actual bottom of the line, the bottom of this line,
Yeah.
the top of this line. There's the bottom of this P is even with the bottom of this E. So there's another piece of space that they calculated typography for below this to this. If I put a P next to like a lowercase g, this from here to there is the same.
This makes me think of, Chuck, it makes me think of, remember elementary school when you were first learning how to write nicely, which we all then, immediately forgot how to do when we got to, when we graduated college. You had two lines, right? And your lowercase letters, they had to touch the bottom line, they had to touch the top line. But then you had some letters like a Y that dip below that line, and then you some letters like a H, talking all lowercase here, have an element that goes above a line. So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly in typography, that math I was trying to do originally, that 10 divided by 1080, that would actually be the element height of like a 10-point E. something that doesn't
Yes.
go above or
Yes.
below the line.
Right.
But if we add the amount above and below the line that different characters could occupy, depending on the shape of the character or whether it's a capital letter or not, that is what takes that 10 divided by 1080, which is about 0.9, and makes 10-point font actually closer to, like, I think you said 1.5.
So it's usually between, depending, and also depending on the font, because some fonts are different.
Okay.
It could be anywhere from 1.3 to 1.5 times the point number.
Got it.
So there's a bunch of different things. And I sent you some links on the typography for what they use for web.
Oh, okay.
And it explains the different, exactly what those lines you were talking about. It shows you examples. It explains it. And it says, the point system, it says this is 10 points. So that like lowercase e is going to be 10 point, but the lowercase y might be like, or it'll be the 10-point font would be the lowercase e. That lowercase y is going to be a bit different. And even that e isn't going to be pixel to point.
Yeah.
It's going to be about 1.3 to 1.5 times, depending on the letter. That e might be 1.3. That y might be 1.5.
Okay.
So that pixel to font correlation or pixel to point correlation, it doesn't actually work a lot of the times if we're going 1-to-1. Even if we're going 1-to-3 and we have to, so what we really want to do is measure. Okay. So I have a monitor in front of me that's 13.25 inches, 13.25 inches from the bottom of the image to the top of the image. If I measure my my actual letter and I look at it and say, okay, this letter is, say, a half an inch. How does that correlate with 13.25? So I have to do a little bit of math in there, and I say, okay, this letter that's half an inch is, say, 2.5% of the overall height. So that element of the lowercase letter is a 2.5%. So now we look at this. This is about a 30% here, the armor. But in a different part of this art history class, they're actually concentrating on the placement of moles. So the placement of moles kind of, I'm not an art history major, but this is what somebody was saying. I don't even know if this is totally accurate, but where the placement was the mole on the face dictated your standing in the hierarchy of society. So,
okay.
Like, because he had the mole above his brow, he was a royalty, a lord or something like that. If he had it on his chin, he would be more of a lower in the hierarchy. Okay. So if I'm looking at this mole here, this mole is like a 0.5%. So I blow it up so I can see it better. Now this mole is like 1.5 to 2% of the overall height of this screen.
Yeah.
So it's not just text. It's not just the text. So with text, we want to use lowercase letters, and we want to make sure that letter is like an E or an R, and it's not like the Y or the P or a G, something that goes below that where the bottom line would be. Okay. But this element could be anything. It can be a picture of a pig, and you're trying to diagnose what kind of pigs they have on this farm, or a picture of a farm, I should say, with pigs in it. And you have to specifically look for these pigs and make basic decisions on how many pigs are in the area for, hey, we took a picture of this, we put it up on the screen, how many pigs take up a certain percentage of this area of the farm. So
would it be fair if I'm trying to sort of put this in my own words to define element as the smallest portion of a picture required to make your decision that you need to make?
How they actually defined it, percent element height.
Okay.
It's the smallest collection of pixels that a viewer needs to be able to discern. For calculations that determine a display image height or closest or farthest viewer, one must also determine how much of the display is filled by the element in question. So exactly right. Okay. The smallest collection of pixels that a viewer needs to see. It's a collection of pixels.
Yeah.
So if it's the lower lettercase E, good to go. It's an E. I physically measure that E and I compare it to the measurement of the screen. So I'm going to make some easy math here. If I had a screen that was 10 inches tall and I measured my my lowercase letter to a 1/2 inch,
Yeah.
that would be a 5% element height.
Okay.
If I had that same 10-inch tall screen and the letter is a 1/4 inch, that would be a 0.25 or a 2.5% element height.
Mm-hmm.
So we can make this, think of a 90-inch diagonal, it's about 45 inches tall.
Yeah.
If I have a 1/2 inch letter, that's just over 1%.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, if it's 45 inches, 0.45 of an inch, just under 1/2 an inch
Mm-hmm.
would be 1%. So for a 90-inch diagonal, if I did quick math in my head, looking for a 3% element height, 0.45 times 3 is a 1.35 inch tall character or element.
Okay.
So quick math, 90-inch diagonal, 45 inches tall. If I'm just going, you know, horseshoes and hand grenades closer.
Yeah. Right.
45 inches tall. Actually, it'd be 46 for a 90-inch diagonal. 46 inches tall, 46 divided by 0.03, 3%.
Mm-hmm.
That would be 13.8 or a 1.38 inch tall character.
Okay.
So now, once I have the character, I could multiply that by 200,
Mm-hmm.
and that would give me my furthest viewer.
Okay.
Or I could say, if I have a 3% element height, 3% is a 6 times viewing ratio,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, 3% times 200 is 6. 0.03 times 200 would be 6. That would be 6 times that display's height.
Yeah.
So I can look at an existing display. If the client says, I'm in a room that's, say, 50 feet deep,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a 90-inch display,
Mm-hmm.
my people can't see the text. How big should my text be? Okay, good. Let's see, I have 600 inches at a 50 foot. I would have 600 inches.
Yep.
So let's see, my display would have to be at least 100 inches tall.
Uh-huh.
Well, I can't make a 100-inch tall display because I have a 90-inch already existing, 90-inch diagonal, 46-inch tall.
Yeah.
So if I had a 100-inch tall display, that element would need to be at least 3 inches tall, correct?
Yep.
So on a 90-inch diagonal with a 46-inch tall display, it still needs to be 3 inches for people to see because my eye holes don't change. So
Right.
now I need to work out how much of a percentage that 3 inches needs to be for my 46-inch tall display.
Okay.
Roughly about an 8%, maybe 7.5%.
Yeah.
So let's do some quick math here. Let me find my handy dandy calculator. And if I did 46 times 7.5 would be, what's 7.5 times 7.5, or actually 0.075 times 200 would be 15. 46 times 15. That's 690 inches. That's just a bit above 600 inches. Let me see if 7% will work. 0.07 times 200, 14.
Yeah.
07
That's all I
times
see.
14, so 46.
It's excited. No, I don't want to.
644. I might be able to get away with 6% element height. 0.06
Okay.
times 200 equals 12. Let's see, 46 times 12.
Just to give you an idea of what it
Nope.
looks like real quick.
Let me see if I can do a 7% or a 6.5. 6.5. So that'd be 46 times 13.
All right.
So 6.5% of a 6.5% element height.
Yep.
On a 46-inch display would be roughly 3 inches.
Okay.
That would be 598-inch furthest viewer.
Like that whole.
Okay.
So instead of
And
saying
that's the farthest viewer?
Yeah. So
Recalculate?
remember, I said we have a 600 furthest viewer. We have 50 feet. 50 times 12 is 600 inches.
Yeah.
So how big does our text need to be? So 600 inches at a 3% would yield a 3-inch element height.
Okay.
Okay. I still need that 3 inches. No matter how tall my display is, I still need that 3 inches.
Right. Right.
So at a 46-inch tall display, it would need to be about a, what did I do? 6%? Let's see,
Yeah.
6.
6.5, I think.
13 times 46. Yeah, at a 6.5% element height, 6.5 times 200 is going to give me 13. That's my viewing ratio.
Okay. 200 is your multiplier for
basic decision making.
Okay, basic decision making.
Yeah, it's always going to be 200. That's a fixed thing. And the math for that is in the back of the book. There's some
Got it.
goes on there. So for 46-inch tall display, a 6% element is going to be roughly 3 inches, or 6.5, excuse me,
Okay.
roughly 3 inches. So then I could see 598 feet, 2 feet shy of 600. That will give me the ability for that person all the way in the back, 600 inches or 50 feet, with their existing 46-inch tall display or their 90-inch diagonal.
Right. Right.
So instead of running 3%, because they're like, hey, we're running 3%, what's wrong? I'd say, okay, doing this math, you've got to actually make your content 6.5%. I didn't change the display. I didn't sell you anything new. I didn't specify a massive 100-inch tall. What would that be? Oh my God. That would be about a 210-inch diagonal, right?
Yeah.
On a 16 by 9.
Yep.
So I didn't spec this massive display. Just make your content bigger and we're good.
Right. But usually you don't have, obviously, display size and farthest viewer are proportional. They're linked together, right? And
well, why is that?
Why are the two of them linked together?
Yeah, why is display size and furthest viewer linked together?
Well, furthest viewer is, I mean, the text is going to be smallest to that furthest viewer.
Why?
I mean, other than simply they're furthest from the screen.
It's because we open up Excel at its native and we take that for granted. We open up PowerPoint, and unless somebody follows PowerPoint guidelines, because PowerPoint actually scales, if they put a paragraph on their PowerPoint, they make their text very tiny.
Yeah.
What we have to get into the habit of doing now is taking that client's needs and saying, okay, no matter what you put on here for basic decision making, Excel, PowerPoint, Word docs, your text physically has to be 3 inches for the furthest viewer to see. I don't care if you have a 90-inch diagonal or a 45-inch diagonal or a 200-inch diagonal. The thing has to be 3 inches. And we do exactly what you said, and we correlate furthest viewer with screen size. We need to correlate furthest viewer with content. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So now Excel in its native is 11 point. So if I did that on a 1080 that was 46, say I'm roughly 2%, and the people in the back can't see, well, I need to make my Excel bigger.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I just kind of always assume in business settings, for conference rooms, let's assume 1080p is the resolution they're running at, because anything higher just makes the text impossible to read.
Right.
And the display size, if you wanted it readable, to be sort of, comically big, right?
Well, not comically. For the furthest viewer, we want to make it 3%.
But a lot of times the rooms don't even have the ceiling height to accommodate the right screen size to properly read 4K. Right. I actually worked with my son to build an iOS app to kind of help integrators kind of quickly put these put numbers together based on what you said at the beginning, simply the height, width, and depth of the room.
Uh-huh.
but I wanted to make it simple and extrapolate as much information, design information as I could based on that and like their target aspect ratio and
Right.
you know, whether the audience was sitting or standing, things like that, because we do some things with height. But I also realized I would have to make some assumptions to keep it simpler, because if I opened it up and didn't make some assumptions, it would get very long and there'd be a lot of data
Sure.
that would have to be input. So
Sure.
in that respect, it's called AV System Designer, by the way. In that respect, I would do something like assuming 10-point font at 1080p resolution, and then I could come up with some that kind of fixes the basis of your content, and then I can help kind of give
Right.
quick numbers on screen size, and make some assumptions on farthest viewer. Again, there the depth of the room is not necessarily the farthest viewer, so I think I do something like take 85% of the room depth.
Sure.
And just because you don't have control of the farthest viewer and the nearest viewer usually. Furniture set more often than not, and a lot of times, I mean, I'd be interested to hear if you've had different experience, but I would think that consultants and integrators alike wouldn't really be able to get a lot of traction trying to get the user to stay within certain guidelines for the content that would create, because it would have to the word would have to get out to so many people within the within your client's company and organization.
So here's the great thing about DISCAS is,
Yeah.
excuse me, I can give the client a multiple of options.
Yeah.
I can say, we're going to make a big display and you can use 1080p and your native of everything.
Yeah.
And you can see back. Or I'm going to give you a smaller display and we make your content, we work with you on your content to make your content larger. And then people can still see all the way back, but you don't have a 200-foot diagonal screen. You have maybe
Right.
100 or a 200-inch diagonal screen. You have maybe a 100-inch diagonal screen. And we go with a 5% or 6%, vice of 3%.
Sure.
Or we can split the difference. We can go with a medium size, not the smaller, the larger, and we can make your content a little bit bigger, not comically big.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, your furthest viewer is 50 feet away, and you put a 42-inch display in there, I can make it comically big, and they can still get the message.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to put a small, fat man in a little coat. We don't want to put a
right.
display in this big giant wall.
And the kicker on top of that is your furthest viewer is almost always the most important person in the room.
Right. They're the head of the table.
Top of the table, the head of the table. Yep.
And so it's funny. I can always tell when someone doesn't talk to their clients about content, because all of their meetings take place in the first third of the room of this
because nobody can see in the back half or so of the room.
And they're putting paragraphs up on PowerPoint, and everybody has to cram into like the front of the room. Like, somebody needs to work with you guys on your content. Your AV system's not the problem; it's the content.
Right.
And I actually did this. I was on a plane with somebody, and they were working on a PowerPoint, and I swear to God, they had like the tiniest little text. And I said,
"Did you start shaking?"
Well, no, I said, I don't mean to be a Budinsky, but like, I will buy you a drink if you let me talk to you about this. I do this for a living. And they're like, all right, sure. And so I opened up my laptop and I said, okay, you're going to watch this presentation from 20 feet back. How long is this presentation going to be up on the screen? And they're like, 30 seconds. I'm like, okay, are you talking during this 30 seconds? And they said, well, yeah. And I said, I'm not going to be able to concentrate on reading this tiny paragraph and you talking at the same time. So you can either flick the paragraph, leave it up for 30 seconds, I read it, stay silent, or you can put your bullet statements and then do what a presenter does and present, and they pay attention to you. 1 second. I just got to.
Yeah.
They're going to a statement.
Okay. I actually have somebody coming to see me here in a little while.
Okay.
But can you open this real quick? Sorry. I'm in the middle
Yeah,
still.
I'm about to.
Okay. Can you just
Yeah, I'll leave it.
So I need to work with my clients on their content. I need to work with my clients on exactly what's on the screen per their screen size. And if they want to drop coin and they have a big ceiling and they want a 200-inch diagonal, great. We'll keep it at 3%. If
Yeah.
they want to make it smaller, if the ceiling's only 10 foot, this is the way we're going to better serve our clients by saying, you need to make your stuff bigger. Now, remember, this isn't just AV guys coming up with this. This is optometrists saying you need a certain amount of stuff to be able to digest this.
Yeah, right.
This is what DISCAS, this is the heart of DISCAS. It's not just AV, it's working with the human for a better experience.
Right.
And it's a huge mindset. Trust me. I mean, when we first got it, the instructors literally went through 30 days of training with like,
Man.
I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I do this for a living. I couldn't just get it. And we were questioning this and questioning that. It's a big mindset change of, it's not just the size of the display in the room.
Yeah.
Everything. It's the human eye hole. It's how high our necks look up. When you start putting it up higher, my neck hurts, so I have to move back to be
comfortable. That's what is it, like 30-degree angle of
30-degree, yeah. And now there's some really good math behind this that justifies all this and says, okay, this and that, and we take all this into account, including the stuff on the screen.
Yeah.
So now we have to become less of AV sales and more of, I'm going to consult on human experience.
Right.
Technology is just a little bit of it. Content and space are also in there.
Yeah.
So we do all this stuff, and we have DISCAS deals with analytical decision making and basic decision making, and this is from PISCR, the Projected Image Systems Contrast Ratio. So basic decision making also has a 15:1 contrast ratio. Analytical also has a 50:1 contrast ratio. This plays up big time later. So,
so on the passive decision maker, passive viewing, would using the what is it, the 8 part of the 4-6-8 rule?
That's all gone.
Still works.
Well, you can use the 8, but 4-6-8, we're killing it. Like, it's dead, not coming back to life. It's not a zombie. Passive viewing, you could have. Think about a passive viewing is an arrow saying go this way. It's not even a basic decision like I have to read something.
Okay, it's not watching. It's not TVs in the corporate gym that are just playing TV stations.
No, that would be full motion video.
Okay.
Passive viewing is literally like a restroom sign with the dude holding his leg, right?
Yeah.
Or like an arrow saying go this way to this party. It's an arrow blinking off and on.
Okay.
So your contrast ratio is 7:1. It's really low.
Yeah.
And we don't worry about the size of that because literally you can see an arrow this big from 50 feet away and know I have to go that way.
Okay.
You could see a red light blinking and know that this is a TV studio. That means they're on air.
Right.
Like that's just a passive viewing, like, or a thing that says in progress. Like I can read that pretty far away if it's the sign this isn't. So we don't even worry about passive viewing in our display height.
Got it.
Full motion video, we don't even want to get into the height of that because I want to sit in the middle of a movie theater.
Yeah.
I want to be like
full visual field.
Yeah. I want to be, or I want to have on goggles that are encompassing me 360 degrees. So full motion video, not worried about it. We're worried about analytical, which is a pixel level detail.
Okay.
So medical imaging, if I'm trying to diagnose if a patient has cancer or if they do have cancer, where do I cut? So I'm looking at cells, individual cells, or like
it's architecture. It's looking at individual lines, medical imaging, looking at real high detail stuff.
100%.
Okay.
So I have the two that I'm really going to concentrate on.
Sure.
And I want that 15:1 contrast ratio for basic decision making.
Yep.
I want that 50:1 for analytical decision making.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And ADM specialized in 2. We just talked about that. Basic decision making, cool. ADM is going to have a much more stringent furthest viewer, because again, we're looking at pixel level detail. And also we're not going to have a furthest viewer on ADM. If I get right up into the displays business, that's fine. I'm looking at pixels.
Right.
So no, the furthest viewer is going to be really short. And that's what I think we were talking about when you said, hey, I had a 10-point thing and my furthest viewer was this. It made me like a 50-foot display. Like, no. That's analytical. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So medical imaging, map reading, satellite maps for like, MARSOC is planning an invasion and there's a satellite looking down at troop movement. And I have to tell if there's a enemy troop in a bush. That's pixel on pixel detail.
Yeah.
Basic decision making, PowerPoints, Word docs. Now, if you look at this screen, it says 3 times the image height for 1.5% element height. So if my screen height, again, is 100 inches.
Yeah.
1.5% is 1.5 inches. I can see that 300 inches away.
Okay.
If it's a 50-foot tall or a 50-inch tall screen, more realistic.
Yeah.
1.5 of that 50 is 150 inches, but 1.5 element is going to be a 0.75. So the element went from 1.5 inches to half of that.
Yeah.
Well, my screen went half, 3 times went half. And so we have 2 times, 4 times the image height, or 2.2%, 4 times the image height, 5%, 2.5, and it's all based on 200. So if I multiply 2.5%, 0.025 times 200, I get 5.
Okay.
That's my viewing ratio, 5 times the image height.
Got it.
0.03 or 3% times 200, 6 times the image height.
Okay.
That's a down and dirty, like we're taking the content in, and the size of the display can be variable. So somebody says, if I say to my client, what do you do? And they say PowerPoint. I say, okay, you know what? Just throw it up on your laptop monitor. And their laptop monitor is 10 inches. I pull out a ruler, literally measure that, and it's a 1/2 inch character for the lowercase e. Okay, you've got 10 inches, a 1/2 inch. That's a 0.5% image height. That means I can go 10 times the size of your display. Let's look at the so now I know your content. Let's look at the room. The room is 50 feet. So that means I can go 10 times the size of the display, 600 inches divided by 10, 60-inch tall display, right? Is that right? So 60-inch tall display, that's 121-inch diagonal. That's a pretty easy projection screen. I mean, that's a 5-foot tall. And that's a large room, and you have 3%. Bing, bang, boom, Bob's your uncle, we're done.
Yeah. Okay.
So once you start getting the mat, and if they say, well, you know what, I have a 5-foot tall screen in a 10-foot tall room. Okay, that's cool. I can even drop it down so we get that 48-inch eye line.
Right.
Or if it's
6-foot tall screen.
Sure. We don't need to.
Yeah.
All we need is a 5. If you want a 6, great. People can see even easier. But your basics, depending on your content, your basics is a 60-inch tall screen. Right. So, and we can do the math on this. And if they say, well, no, I don't want a 60-inch tall screen. I want a 48-inch tall screen. I say, at this point, I say, okay, we could do that. We're going to have to change your content and make it bigger, or people in the back just aren't going to be able to see. Or your furthest viewer is going to get closer. And if they say, oh, no, people sit back there, then we start seeing people only using the first third of the room. The important person can't see. That's when that's the bad experience we're trying to get away. So you can do that. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just warning you, it's going to be a bad experience.
Yeah. We actually have a client like that, and we ran the math and told them, for the size of this room, you need a projector and a screen. They were like adamant, we don't want projector, we want flat panels. And I'm like, well, okay, then you're going to need to be okay with sitting in the front half of the room. Oh, that's what we do already. We're okay with that.
Oh, God.
Have a good time.
Yeah. Acknowledge, move on, do what they want. Sure, just don't let anybody. I mean, I'm advising you as I'm working for you. This is our business relationship.
Yep. As
I want
long
you
as
to
we
be-
have the tools to give them a recommendation, like I said, when we had that discussion online on LinkedIn, a lot of people just they gravitate towards, if you at least give them, this is the minimum recommended standard, and you tell them
Mhm.
standard, it gives people, a real security blanket in deciding to go with one display size. We had a client who I put the whole list together of all their rooms and recommended screen sizes, and in almost every instance they went up a step or two in size
Yeah.
from that. But at least they knew what their baseline was.
So what we're getting a lot now is I'm getting end users. I'm getting technology managers
Okay.
that, and sometimes people don't think of them as an end user, but they are actually the end user for an integration company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this gives the technology manager some teeth to go back to their administration and say, hey, based on what you guys are teaching and how you're teaching it, our screens are too small. We
Yeah.
either need bigger screens or make your content bigger.